Hi, and welcome to Unlimited Possibilities. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Knightbeck. I am the recruiting director for the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. And our today's topic is going to be seasonal depression. We have a guest with us today, Angela Dunn. Hello, Angela.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Unlimited Possibilities.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it says here that you are a licensed specialist clinical social worker. That is a mouthful. Can you tell me what that means?
I am, yes. So I have my master's degree in social work, and the extra clinical licensure is given after time when people have a certain number of years and hours under clinical supervision from another licensed therapist.
So it sounds like that you have a lot of experience in mental health. I know you have some experience with cases. Can you tell me a little bit more about your background and how you work with people with community?
Sure. So I've been a social worker for over 16 years. Most of that experience has been here in Wyandotte County and primarily at our community mental health center. The child side of that is called cases. So I started as a therapist and then supervised the therapist there and was eventually their clinical director. I spent a bit of time at Children's Mercy before joining Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. Several years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, when I was at PACES, we were getting a lot of referrals from the school district, but only about 30% of them were panning out to an intake, meaning there were 70% of the kids that were referred, so the school noticed that they needed some mental health services, but they weren't coming in. And there's a lot of barriers to that. So when I was at PACES, I developed a school-based therapy program, which is certainly where my passion is just to provide mental health services where students and families are at, and break down those barriers of transportation or finances to getting to the mental health center. So it was a wonderful opportunity to join the district and be able to then offer those mental health supports in all of our schools.
Wow, that's quite impressive. And thank you for the work that you've been doing. As you well know, the winter is approaching.
Yeah.
And as things get cold, things change. Our mood changes. So we refer to a seasonal depression or winter depression. Is it okay to refer to it as winter depression? Can you tell me a little more what happens with the winter change?
Yeah, so I think it's commonly referred to as seasonal depression or the winter blues. The technical term is seasonal affective disorder,
okay.
And that is what would be used as far as a diagnosis goes.
Okay, and it has the acronym SAD or SAD,
It does.
which I think is very telling. So if I were somebody who was not sure if I had this seasonal affective disorder, what are some common traits or qualifications that would indicate that maybe I do?
Yeah, so seasonal affective disorder looks really similar to depression, but it only starts in the fall and winter months. So those symptoms might look like feeling sad or low, having a loss of interest in activities that used to be fun and exciting, a change in sleep, particularly sleeping too much, a change in appetite, particularly just overeating, kind of filling that void. Significant symptoms might be just thoughts of suicide.
Okay. And is there a general population that is more affected by this disorder, or is it a pretty general?
I think anyone can experience seasonal affective disorder. When we look at statistics, we know that about 5% of people in America suffer from seasonal affective disorder, and that occurs about 40% of the year. So it could start around October, November when the weather changes, but it's triggered by just our circadian rhythm, our biological clock. And when we're getting less sunlight, that affects our brain and some of the chemicals that are happening. And so some people can feel that way. There's not a particular demographic that might suffer more than others, but typically people will see signs or symptoms between the ages of 18 and 30. That's not to say that younger kids or certainly older adults won't start experiencing those symptoms, but statistics show us that's kind of the range that people start noticing those things.
What would you say some of the dangers of not diagnosing your depression are?
I think for some people, especially if it comes on in a slow way, might not recognize how it's impacting their functioning. And that's the biggest indicator. It's really normal to feel sad or to have, some mild symptoms of the winter blues. It's the holidays, it's COVID, and we're not able to engage with friends and family like we have in the past. So it's really normal for people to feel low. But when we start to notice that it's impacting school, it's impacting work, it's impacting our relationships, that's when we know we need to get help. I think it's incredibly important to look at just our health and well-being overall. And when we start to notice that some of those things are declining, maybe we've gained some weight, maybe we're drinking too much, maybe we're not motivated and we're in bed too much, and so we're avoiding other activities. Those are some warning signs that people need to get help.
I have two other questions that came to mind. So do you believe that a support system is important if you feel that maybe you have depression, but you're not sure?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I think maintaining social support and family support as much as possible right now. Maybe we can't do them in person, but reaching out with a phone call or a text or engaging in a virtual platform with people can be so helpful. Often we might not notice that we're not feeling well ourselves, but other people notice. Our parents might notice, or our neighbors might notice, or our friends, to say, hey, you've just seemed not yourself. You've seemed down. And so staying connected with people can be really helpful, because often they'll point it out and ask us if we're okay.
I think that's wise. We don't always notice our behavior shifts,
Mm-hmm.
and other people do, and to have that strong relationship with a few people to help guide you in the right direction, I think is important.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do I know as an individual that this is not COVID depression, this is winter depression, or is it both?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That's a hard thing to determine right now. This is so new. I don't think any of us have been, cooped up in our house and not able to engage in our normal activities for this many months in a row. And so that could certainly be a challenge. I think what we would go back to then is just the month and the timing of the year. So maybe I was feeling okay in the spring and the summer and at the beginning of fall, but now I'm not. And so that could certainly be related to seasonal affective disorder, because the sun has changed, right? The amount of sunlight I'm getting is different. The season is different. And so that would be, I think, the key indicator is just the time of year that those symptoms started setting in.
So I think a common misconception is that if you have an illness or you have a disorder or something, that it needs to be treated with medication. Is that true? Do we go straight to medication? Are there other remedies that could help with this seasonal type of depression, or this even COVID depression?
Yeah, I think that is a misconception. We don't need medication if we're not feeling great. Some other things that people could start with, and something that's been really effective with seasonal affective disorder, is light therapy.
Okay.
So being in front of a light box, and those can be purchased on Amazon and a variety of other sources. But 20 minutes a day of sunlight has been shown to significantly increase someone's mood. Also, just getting out in the sunlight was really nice the other day. So just being able to be outside, sitting on the porch or taking a walk can be so helpful. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also helpful. So just talk therapy, going to see someone to talk through how you're feeling, how those thoughts are related to your feelings, can be significantly helpful, and just give people some tools to use when they're not feeling so great. SSRIs, which are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that is a common medication that can be helpful. So any of those avenues or combination can really help.
So we talked about getting in those avenues of help. So what are some resources, maybe those who through employers or through community partnerships? What are some of the resources that we could utilize to help?
Yeah. So we have some incredible community partners in this area. We work really closely with Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network, Wyandotte Center for Adults, and Cases for Children. Vibrant Health is also a mental health provider in the area. Here in the district, we have a care line. And so that's available 24/7 for parents or students or even staff members that might be struggling. And that's 913-954-0219. It's actually my cell phone number.
Okay.
And so people can call or text just to get some resources. There's also a local crisis line, and that's answered 24/7 as well. If people are experiencing severe symptoms of depression and thinking about suicide or thinking about harming someone else, that number is available and someone would respond immediately. And that's 913-788-4200.
Well, Angela, I think those are all the questions that I had. I want to thank you for coming and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. I think it's an important topic, so I'm glad we were able to meet and chat about it.
And I hope you're able to come back on Unlimited Possibilities again in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on Unlimited Possibilities. I am Dr. Ron, and we will see you next time. To find out more about Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, go to www.kckps.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.